Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
After our 100th episode, it feels almost wrong not to go back and touch upon one of our favorite topics. So we've discussed this quite a few times, and I think it's enough of entertaining our listeners so far, right? I think we should just go back and start doing all the topics we've done so far on the show. We've got 100 to bank from.
Why are you doing this, Sharan? So before you chase all our listeners away and scare them, let me clarify for their benefit. We are not going to rehash our old episodes, but since we have spoken about some of these timeless principles before, and we want to strengthen your conviction in them, we will, pick up some of the principles that we have discussed earlier, but we will introduce two live case studies to them.
Okay. We'll talk about these strategies and how they played out on these two iconic brands.
Yeah.
Nike and Airbnb.
Correct. And, it is interesting talking about some of these case studies because, we always talk about the fact that marketing, while it leads the way for a company, any mistake on the marketing front has the potential to cost the brand very dearly. And, maybe through these case studies, we will see how marketing world and its decisions are also fraught with risk, possibly like politics these days. But I'm sure it will be interesting for listeners to read through. And the idea is not to push them towards one extreme that, completely believe into this philosophy or the other. Like politics, the answer lies somewhere in between.
Cool. So let's start with Nike.
Okay.
A brand that actually shifted significantly towards D2C, right, before the Indian D2C wave started, but they shifted even before the pandemic. And they almost gave up their moat, which was their traditional distribution channels and the wholesale partners that they were working with. And the brand has gone into some really tough times.
Okay. And maybe after that, once you've explained Nike, I'll talk about Airbnb, about this being a digital first brand where, performance marketing should come up as naturally should come up as one of the biggest mediums for them, while they're also competing with variety of websites across the world. And their decisive shift to move their spends towards brand marketing, and what has that done for the brand and how are they taking it forward?
Perfect. And you got numbers also, right, as usual?
Yeah, of course. And in fact, and numbers are there for everybody to see. I would, in fact, encourage listeners to search for these two brands and read up more on them. While we have done our own research and we would present some facts, some interpretations, but we would definitely urge all of you to read up on these and form your own opinion and maybe educate us if you find something differently.
Perfect. So before we dive into the specifics for Nike, right? So let's look at what's the logic behind it. Let's kind of set the stage, right? So we've got so much data available and marketing is finally measurable with performance marketing, or let me say digital advertising, right? Now, this is a pretty logical way for a business to think, saying, if I'm putting money behind it, I know exactly what I'm getting back. So why not put more money behind it?
Yeah.
And I think Nike, like I said, before the pandemic, I think around 2017, is when they made a strategic pivot to say, I'm going direct to consumer. I'm cutting out the middleman. I'm making up the margin. I don't want as many wholesale distributors as I already had. The entire thing is more for the US market because that's where the bulk of the business is. And they believe that cutting out this middleman will improve their margins, which is also logical.
Very nice. And Sharan, I can bet my bottom dollar on it. There must have been one of the big fours consulting them at this
Very
point
likely,
in
no?
time. Very likely. It is impossible that a running business takes such a drastic call on its own. Either they had a new CEO or who had come from a consulting company, or they got one of the big fours to consult them.
Okay. Don't vent so much anger on consultants also. The decision is taken by the business.
Correct. The consultants only suggest or they corrupt, and then the decision is squarely with the business.
Thank you.
Okay. So while you said that Nike made this decisive shift to, one, get to marketing where it can attribute results, and number two, close its wholesale distributors down, thereby shoring up some margin. What I remember is it gave some positive results also, right?
True. They also had the tailwinds of the wholesale, right? It doesn't just because I started performance marketing today, it doesn't mean my brand is starting from scratch today.
Yeah.
It's got the tailwinds of the brand marketing that's been done earlier. At least that's my assumption. And when the pandemic hit, after them moving D2C in 2017 and the pandemic coming in, they almost struck gold because online shopping was the only avenue for people.
Okay, but I think they also fell into trouble after that. Tragedies struck soon after.
Yeah, quite a few tragedies actually, because
Hmm.
they underestimated the power of wholesale, especially when it comes to brand visibility and customer accessibility, right? So I worked on a retail brand recently, and this brand was a very distant number 3 in a category which has got a very dominant number 1.
Mhm.
And the number 1 brand talks about, I have variety, I have the largest variety. But the number 3 player also has almost the same variety.
Hmm.
But people just perceive the number 1 player to have more variety. It's the perception that matters about how you talk about, how do you display it. So
Okay.
when people walk into a retail store to buy shoes, they want the variety. They might still want Nike, but they want to look at other options before deciding on a brand, even if it is Nike.
Hmm.
And they also cut ties with major retailers like the Big Five, Urban Outfitters, even Zappos, which is a case study of its own. And they focused more on their own channels, their own stores, their apps and websites, what they were going on. See, but the thing is, the customers didn't necessarily just follow Nike out of these stores and the retailers, which is what a lot of big brands assume. I'm so big that my customers will follow me wherever I go because I have that many fans in the business. That did not happen. And
Okay.
people continued to go to multi-brand retailers because they had more options.
Okay. And therefore, what did it lead to?
Well, financially, it wasn't great. Then North America's sales started to dip. In fact, it's one of the biggest markets, like I said earlier. And for the first time, it started to dip. And even the D2C business wasn't meeting its objectives or targets. So it was their first ever declining quarter in 2 years after they went D2C. So this is partly due to new brands coming into these retailers and occupying the space Nike had vacated. So unlike in India, in the US, retail space is of a premium. It's all organized. Every brand vies to be at a retailer spot. The moment Nike exits, there's always somebody waiting to fill that space. And when they become an option for the shoppers and they offer the deal, so there was On, Asics, Hoka, they all just came in and took Nike space and they became the ones chosen by customers. And especially they lost out on the running segment, which is the recruiter kind of a subcategory within these sneakers. These brands, obviously what happened, they lost market share. So Nike lost market share to these new brands.
Okay. And so while Nike is known for its followership, etc., they're also known for their innovation, right?
Yes, that's actually a very, very good point.
And innovation also seems to have suffered in this process. And
Absolutely.
how did that happen?
So I'm sure you'll blame a consultant for this, which is also very likely because instead of focusing on innovation, right, which is the ethos of the brand, they always came up with new innovations to make whatever sport or endurance you were in easier or better. So here they went into full brand work after doing performance marketing. They went into nostalgia. They started launching bring back the old kind of hits to the market. They're counting more on nostalgia. They're catering to the super fans of the brand. And that was so far removed from the brand ethos that it looked like the brand had lost touch with what is happening in the market. And they were not launching any innovative products. And this is a failure at the core of the brand. And it started hurting their equity, which people thought was untouchable. And this over dependence on D2C also and not having innovations and having pulled back from wholesale distribution with a complete hit on market share, on sales. And it's almost like you handing them a platter to say, come take it. It's almost like it's worse than RCB giving up. It's saying, please take. And it just failed to keep track with consumers' demand and the demand for novelty, innovation, and almost pushed consumers away to other brands.
It is also quite possible, Sharan, that while looking for innovation, they must have looked at which particular lines of theirs have the lowest CAC cost, customer acquisition cost.
Yep.
And those might have been the classic ones because there were a certain set of consumer who were, they
Fans
thought
away.
that let's try and massify it. That's what possibly guided their
Yeah.
innovation strategy.
Very likely, right? They went retro on sneakers, which caters to such a tiny niche. And that's pretty evident of what's happened, right?
Okay. So what's the takeaway here? What would you like the listeners to
Well,
abstract from this?
so I don't have to come up with the takeaway because the company's changed course recently and they started re-engaging wholesalers. They want to revitalize their product lines with innovation. And they're now taking a balanced approach and not choose one over the other. While the CEO has gone on record saying D2C will be their fastest growing channel, it is not their overarching brand strategy anymore.
Nice.
Which they're saying we will build our brand for the long term while also focusing on delivering business in the short term, which is what should have been the objective to start with for a brand, for any brand for that matter, let alone such a huge brand like Nike.
Interesting. In fact, I must tell you that I'm a part of this community called Striders, and where I have some very serious runners who are part of that group, and I can see many of them wearing now Hoka, on Brooks, and many more brands which were earlier hitherto unknown to Indian public.
Right.
So I can now correlate this to what you were saying.
Absolutely right.
Okay, excellent. So we move to Airbnb now.
Yes, please.
Okay, excellent. So Airbnb has a very interesting story, Sharan. Now Nike comes from wholesale distribution, physical distribution kind of background. Airbnb is completely the reverse. It's a digital native, digital first brand. And, in one of the interviews, Brian Chesky,
CEO, founder,
the CEO founder of Airbnb, confessed that he was spending more than $1 billion per year in performance marketing, largely on Google.
Imagine the scale of it, no?
$1 billion, yeah. And, Airbnb's revenue wasn't too far away from that. They were possibly doing 1.4, $1.9 billion. So that P&L, I don't understand that P&L, but just the fact that $1 billion in performance marketing is something that they were doing, right? And pandemic hit, and through the pandemic, they did not spend. And immediately after pandemic, they got back 95% of their traffic without spending a single dollar. So then Brian made this observation that we perhaps don't need to spend as much because a lot of the people are anyways coming back. So from about $1.1 billion, their total marketing spend went down to $450 million.
On performance marketing.
Total.
Total marketing.
Total marketing. So 59% cut. Spends cut announced on 3rd March 2021.
Wow. That's huge, right? That's almost unconventional for a brand which operates like Airbnb.
This size. Yeah. Now, within this lies a little bit of a detail. In the 650 million cut, about 550 million cut came from performance marketing. And only 100 million was cut from brand marketing.
Which is even more unconventional for a digital brand like Airbnb.
Correct. And now this is where, their realization starts from. Their realization was that they were possibly subsidizing a sale that would have anyways come by doing performance marketing at that level. Instead, they went back and they launched their first brand campaign, which was about celebrating the hosts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it work though?
It did. So when they started, obviously cutting marketing overall and cutting performance marketing added to their margins. For 4 straight quarters, they grew very well. In fact, 2 years later, in 2023, they had their best Q4 ever, right? All on the back of all of this. So
brand marketing.
brand marketing. So first, let us absorb the overall impact that a digital first brand going significantly cuts on performance marketing
Hmm.
and deciding to invest behind brand marketing.
Who would have thought, no? Nike
Who-
going performance marketing and Airbnb going brand marketing.
Correct. Now, the interesting piece in this, Sharan, while I was reading through multiple articles on this, something struck me in that Q4 call where Brian spoke about a number of things. He also spoke about the fact that I want to pull a little bit of advertising earlier into Q1 because it gives me head start, etc., etc. He also spoke about the fact that the brand marketing has resulted making his brand the generic in the category, which means that most of his traffic was coming directly to his website. Now, herein, I think, lies a significant lesson for all of us, Sharan. For brands which are really big in their category or who are category innovators,
Creators,
yeah, innovators,
definers.
creators, yeah. For them, I still believe that Airbnb route seems like a prudent one.
Hmm.
For as far as possible, try to keep the category name generic to your brand name
Hmm.
so that people land on your website directly. And for
Right. They
that,
search
you
for
will
your
need
brand.
to they search for the brand directly, and for that you will need to spend behind the brand.
Awareness, and that's what drives brand search.
Correct. Once you start becoming generic or there is significant competition, then you have no option but to invest behind performance marketing
Hmm.
because you are fighting it out then when the consumer is already searching for you. But I still believe that that should not take completely away from brand marketing. Otherwise, performance marketing is a never ending cycle.
Right. In fact, even Airbnb said they've seen a slight slowdown of sorts, right, in the last quarter.
Yes. So they did, and they have slightly increased their performance marketing spends. So they're also getting their balance right, but their overall marketing spends are still significantly skewed towards brand marketing.
So, how do you sum up this lesson from Airbnb then?
I think you know if you want to create a sustainable brand, you have to necessarily focus on uh, you know building long-term equity and thereby creating customer loyalty. And long-term equity can't happen just by showing short-term ads or offers or just showing you are available. You have to create some kind of narrative that comes out of storytelling, which really tugs at the emotional strings in somebody's hearts.
Absolutely. And emotion here doesn't have to mean the soft emotion, right? It could be any emotion you want to tie in.
Correct. Correct. And
Then,
like we started at the start of the podcast, we said that it like in politics, it doesn't have to be extreme right or extreme left. The balance lies somewhere in the middle. So you don't have to make your performance marketing zero completely, but arrive at your own balance depending on what your objective, etc.
right, it's called the bothism, right? You don't have to be the extremes, you have to do both. This book on the long and short of it, Les
Ah,
Binet and Peter Fields, they even
ah,
talk about this to say the ideal split is 60-40, 60 to brand and 40 to performance. But this is not stagnant for every brand at every stage of the life cycle. It
mm,
evolves. So,
yeah,
like even Airbnb is doing, tweaking their balance here and there to get it right. Every brand has got to figure a way to tweak brand and performance marketing and figure out how to get both running for them and not having to choose one or the other in the way they build their brand and business.
I would agree. And in fact, why just performance marketing and brand marketing? The Nike example that you spoke about also says the same thing. So offline versus online,
Absolutely. The
right?
same.
There is no one solution to it. Every brand needs to find their own balance depending on what their consumer wants. But possibly chasing one of them completely blindly, disregarding what your consumer preferences are or where what your brand stage is, possibly would lead you into some kind of a debacle. And hence, again, it's not either or, it is both.
Both. Yeah, absolutely. So you've got to be available everywhere the customer has a chance of picking you up. And you've got to talk to the customer everywhere possible without being too intrusive to make your presence felt. So good
It's the
luck to the
beauty of
brands.
this. That's the beauty of this episode, Sharon. it has got you talking about balance. So no more ranting anymore, right? And on that note, I think hopefully we have not given old wine in a new bottle to our audience. These two case studies are very interesting. In fact, I liked while I researched the Airbnb one, I loved listening to the Nike one. And as I said earlier, I would invite everybody to look up for these and let us know if there are any lessons or point of views that we have missed.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.